On her wedding night, Emily realized something terrifying. The man she married was not the man she loved. He looked the same. He sounded the same. But he wasn't him. And by the time she discovered the truth, it was already too late. Because this wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. It was a carefully planned disappearance, a fake death, a financial conspiracy, and a marriage that was never meant to be real. This is the story of how she married the wrong brother, and how she destroyed them both. Emily Carter believed in certainty, and Daniel Hart was certainty. Successful, calm, protective. The kind of man who planned everything, including the rooftop proposal where the skyline glittered like it was celebrating them. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, she felt safe. But safety can be an illusion, because 3 weeks before the wedding, Daniel disappeared for 48 hours. He said it was business. Emily never questioned him. She should have. Daniel had a twin brother, Adrian Hart. They were identical in appearance, but not in energy. At the engagement dinner, Adrian barely spoke. He watched, studied, analyzed, and when Emily excused herself to the balcony, he followed. "You don't really know him," Adrian said quietly. She laughed nervously. "Know who?" But he didn't answer. He just smiled. The wedding was flawless. White roses, crystal lights, elite guests. Daniel stood at the altar. Or at least, she thought he did. During the vows, something felt slightly off. His tone was deeper, his touch firmer, his kiss colder. But nerves explain everything, don't they? In the hotel suite, he removed his jacket. Then he said something Daniel would never say. "You're finally mine." Mine. Daniel never used possessive words. Adrian did. Emily's blood ran cold. She walked toward the mirror. And in that reflection, she saw the difference. A small scar above his eyebrow. Daniel didn't have one. She hadn't married Daniel. She had married Adrian. Emily didn't scream. She didn't panic. She smiled. Because now she understood. Those 48 missing hours. Daniel never came back. Adrian replaced him. But why? The next morning, she searched Daniel's office, hidden inside a drawer. Life insurance documents, recently updated. Beneficiary, Emily Carter. Signed, 1 day before the wedding. Emily didn't confront Adrian. Not yet. Instead, she hired someone who specialized in truths people tried to bury. Marcus Hale, a private investigator known for digging into powerful families. When she showed him Daniel's photo, he didn't react. But when she showed him Adrian's, he leaned back. "The Hart family," he said quietly. "You just married into something very dangerous." Emily kept her voice steady. "My husband disappeared, and his brother replaced him." Marcus studied her face. "Are you sure it's the brother who replaced him?" The question lingered. Because for the first time, Emily wondered if she had misunderstood everything. According to official records, Daniel Hart died 6 months ago. Car accident, vehicle fire, body identified through dental records. Emily stared at the report in disbelief. 6 months ago? That was impossible. She had dinner with him 4 months ago. Vacation photos, messages, calls. Unless, Marcus pointed to one detail. The accident happened during those mysterious 48 hours. And the body was never publicly viewed. Closed casket, private ceremony, no press. Which meant only one thing. Either Daniel died that night, or someone made sure the world believed he did. Marcus dug deeper. Financial transfers, company shares, insurance policies. 3 weeks before the wedding, the Hart parents transferred full control of their company to Adrian. Not Daniel. The parents knew. They always knew. Emily remembered something. At the wedding, Daniel's mother hugged her and whispered, "You'll understand one day." Understand what? Marcus uncovered another detail. The company was under federal investigation for fraud. If Daniel was alive, he would have inherited everything. If Daniel was dead, Adrian became untouchable, and if Adrian married Emily, he gained access to Daniel's life insurance payout. It wasn't a love story. It was a replacement. Emily did something unexpected. She acted normal. She smiled at Adrian. She kissed him goodbye before meetings. She hosted dinner parties for his investors. She became the perfect wife. And Adrian relaxed. Because men who believe they've won stop looking for threats. But every smile Emily gave him was calculated. Every touch, strategic. Every quiet "I love you," a lie. At night, when Adrian fell asleep, she studied him. The scar above his eyebrow, the way he locked his phone, the names he whispered in his sleep. One name repeated more than once. Father. Not Dad. Not Mother. Just Father. And that's when she realized this wasn't just about inheritance. It was about control. A week later, Adrian surprised her with a gift, a diamond bracelet. "Because you deserve security," he said. Security. An odd word. That night, Emily checked the house security system and found something chilling. There were hidden cameras. Not installed recently. They had been there long before she moved in, which meant someone had been watching Daniel for months, maybe years. And if Daniel was being watched, then his disappearance wasn't sudden. It was planned, carefully, precisely, by someone who wanted absolute control. And Emily now lived inside that control. Marcus called at 2:17 a.m. "I think you need to see this." Emily drove to his office without telling Adrian. Marcus replayed airport security footage. Date, 3 weeks ago. A man walked through the terminal wearing a cap and dark hoodie, head slightly lowered. But when he looked up for half a second, Emily's breath stopped. It was Daniel, or someone who looked exactly like him. "This was recorded long after the accident," Marcus said quietly. "But there's more. The ticket was purchased under a fake name. Destination? Zurich. And the payment method? A Hart family offshore account. If Daniel was alive, someone was hiding him, or helping him disappear." Emily went back to the insurance documents, but this time she read the fine print. There weren't one. There were 2 policies. The first one, public. The second one, hidden. And the second policy beneficiary wasn't Emily. It was Adrian. Which meant if Daniel truly died, Adrian would receive everything. But if Adrian died, the entire company reverted to Daniel. Suddenly the game became clear. This wasn't about replacing a brother. It was about forcing one into hiding. Marcus leaned forward. What if Daniel isn't a victim? Emily felt the room spin. What if he agreed to disappear? Emily invited the Hart parents to dinner, not as a daughter-in-law, but as a strategist. The table was set perfectly. Crystal glasses, silver cutlery, soft candlelight. Adrian believed it was a reconciliation dinner. It wasn't. It was a trap. Before anyone arrived, Emily placed a small recording device beneath the table. Marcus waited in a car outside, watching, listening. The conversation began politely. Business updates, market shifts, future expansion. Then Emily leaned forward. "There's something I've been meaning to ask," she said calmly. The room shifted. Subtle tension. Silent eye contact between the parents. Why was Daniel declared dead without a public investigation? The mother froze. The father answered too quickly. It was handled privately. Privately. Emily smiled gently. "Interesting, because I saw him 3 weeks ago." Silence. The kind that exposes guilt. Adrian's jaw tightened. His father's hand trembled slightly against the wine glass, and his mother whispered something barely audible. It was supposed to be temporary. Temporary. Emily felt her pulse slow instead of rise. Because now she had confirmation, Daniel's disappearance was planned. Not by one brother, but by the entire family. The father stood up abruptly. "You don't understand the sacrifices we made." Sacrifices. Emily kept her voice steady. "For the company?" He looked directly at Adrian. "No, for survival." Adrian's expression changed. Not guilt, not fear. Something else. Control. And then he said something that froze the entire room. "You were never supposed to find out this way." Emily's heart pounded, but she didn't show it. Because she had already sent something to Marcus. A transfer request. If Adrian attempted anything reckless tonight, the second insurance policy would automatically trigger a financial freeze. The Hart empire would collapse in hours. She had leverage now. Real leverage. And for the first time since the wedding night, Adrian looked nervous. The door opened slowly. No one had invited anyone. No one was expecting guests. The butler stepped aside, and a man walked in. Tall, calm, controlled, Daniel Hart, alive. The room stopped breathing. Adrian didn't stand. He didn't react. He just watched. Emily felt the world tilt. Daniel looked exactly the same posture, same voice, except this time. There was no warmth in his eyes. "I think it's time we stop pretending," Daniel said quietly. The mother began to cry. The father closed his eyes. Emily stood up slowly. "You're alive." Daniel nodded. "Yes." Not relief. Not apology. Just, yes. Daniel walked to the table. He didn't look at Emily first. He looked at Adrian. And then he smiled. A small, knowing smile. "You handled it well," Daniel said. "Handled what?" Emily's stomach dropped. Adrian finally stood up. "Of course I did," he replied calmly. And suddenly, it became clear. They weren't enemies. They were partners. The disappearance, the accident, the marriage. It was never about replacing a brother. It was about transferring assets. Daniel couldn't legally move certain funds while alive. But if he was declared dead, everything shifted to Adrian. And once the investigation into the company ended, Daniel could return clean, untouchable. The insurance policy, the offshore accounts, the staged accident. It was all strategy, a perfectly executed financial reset. And Emily was collateral. Daniel finally looked at Emily. "We never meant for you to get hurt." She stared back at him, cold, controlled, unshaken. "You didn't," she said quietly. And that was the moment both brothers realized. Emily wasn't trapped anymore. She was 3 moves ahead, because the financial freeze she initiated had already begun. And neither of them knew what she had prepared next. The silence in the dining room felt heavier than truth itself. Daniel was alive. Adrian was complicit. The parents were architects of the scheme. But Emily wasn't shocked anymore. She was ready. Her phone vibrated softly on the table. One notification, then another, then 5 more. Adrian grabbed his phone. His expression changed instantly. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. Emily didn't blink. "I corrected the balance." Across the city, Hart Global Holdings began to freeze. Accounts flagged, transfers suspended, federal audit triggered. Marcus had done exactly what they agreed. The second insurance policy contained a clause. If fraudulent death was proven, all assets would be immediately investigated. And Emily had just sent the evidence. Daniel stepped forward. "You don't understand what you've started." Emily tilted her head slightly. "Oh, I understand perfectly." She pulled a small envelope from her bag. Divorce papers, signed earlier that morning, filed, time-stamped, legal separation initiated before the freeze, which meant she was no longer legally tied to Adrian, and therefore not responsible for the collapse. The father stood up in panic. "You'll destroy everything we built." Emily looked at him calmly. "You built it on lies." Outside, sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just inevitable. Adrian finally lost composure. "You were supposed to be naive." Emily smiled for the first time that night. "That was your mistake." Sirens grew louder outside. The empire was collapsing. Bank accounts frozen. Regulators alerted. Lawyers already calling. Emily believed she had won, until Daniel started laughing. Not loudly, not hysterically, calmly. "You really think we didn't plan for that?" he said. Adrian stepped beside him. For the first time all night, the brothers looked completely united. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of the divorce papers, filed, time-stamped, but altered. Emily's breath slowed. "The prenup," Daniel continued, "contains a loyalty clause. A clause stating that if Emily acted against the family's financial interests during marriage negotiations, she forfeited everything, and technically, she had accessed confidential corporate documents before the divorce was finalized." Adrian smiled. "You walked right into it." For a brief second, it looked like Emily had lost. Emily didn't panic. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she pulled out her own folder. "You're right," she said calmly. "I did access those documents." She placed photographs on the table, photos of Daniel at the Zurich airport, photos of offshore transfers, audio recordings from the dinner, signed confession from the mother. Marcus hadn't just triggered a freeze. He had sent everything to federal authorities. Before the divorce, before tonight, before Daniel even walked in the door. Daniel's smile disappeared. Adrian's confidence cracked. Because there was one detail they overlooked. The loyalty clause applied only if fraud couldn't be proven. But fraud had already been proven. Emily leaned slightly closer. "You were so busy planning against each other. You never considered I was planning against both of you." Silence. True silence. The kind that ends dynasties. 3 months later. Hart Global Holdings no longer existed. Daniel and Adrian were under investigation. The parents resigned quietly. No dramatic arrests, no public scandal, just a slow, controlled collapse. Emily stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city at sunrise. Free. Not because she married the wrong brother, but because she learned the truth. The most dangerous person in the room is the one you underestimate. She turned her phone off. No more secrets, no more lies, just clarity and control. 3 months later, the Hart Empire didn't explode. It dissolved. Quietly. Assets liquidated. Investigations sealed. Investors vanished. Daniel and Adrian stopped fighting the system because they were too busy fighting each other. The brothers who once worked together now blamed each other. And that was Emily's final move. She never intended to destroy them directly. She simply revealed enough truth to make them destroy themselves. But here's what no one knew. Emily had known about the twins before the wedding. She found old photos, old records, old inconsistencies. She suspected a switch long before it happened. And she married into the family anyway, not for love, not for revenge, but for leverage. Because years ago, her father lost everything after trusting Hart Global Holdings, the company that ruined her family, the company that Daniel and Adrian were born to inherit. This was never about marrying the wrong brother. It was about entering the right battlefield. She didn't just survive the deception. She engineered it.